Good afternoon. Welcome to the second edition of the NonProfitWorld TV show in Nigeria. My name is Peace Onwachuku. I'm your host for today. With me here is Betty Abah, who is an activist, a humanitarian, and advocate for children. She is also the founder of Sea Hope Nigeria. Betty, what a fascinating and fulfilling life you've led so far. Can you tell us about your journey?
Thank you very much. I will describe myself as the girl next door, as someone that's trying to make some kind of difference in the life of others because I've always been inspired to do so. First of all, I grew up in a very large polygamous home. My dad married 5 wives and gave birth to about 30 of us. So we've had that large home with a lot of some level of conflicts, never lacking in energy. And so I told myself right from age 5 that I really wanted to be different. I wanted to be distinct. And I wanted to leave a lot of impact in the lives of others because of the most significant figure in my childhood years, which is my father. My father, who is almost 90 now, has led a very active life. Though he's barely educated, but he used to be a community activist, community health worker, someone who was always keenly interested in the welfare of others, who went great lengths, who at some point inconvenienced himself to stand up to defend the rights of others, to help people who are in need, to even at his own at the expense of his personal convenience. So I somehow was inspired and I said, okay, I want to be like my father. I want to make a difference in the life of others, especially if I get to privileged positions. So all my life I aspired to get an education. I went to school very late comparatively in the Nigerian setting. I went to school at the age of 9 for some reasons. And then when I got into school, I basically hit the ground running. Then I got into different clubs, did so many things. And I've been lucky. Besides my father, there have been a lot of influences in my childhood. People who encouraged me, people who donated resources to ensure that I got a quality education and that I grew up as a young, focused person. So I think I've been lucky in that sense. But basically, my life has been all about being inspired and then aspiring to inspire and to be of help to others.
Okay, you are also an author of 6 books. Can you give us a synopsis of each of them and what inspired you to write them?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I got into school at age 9 and then I started writing at age 10 in class 2. So I've always written from a very young age. And I guess it's a genetic thing. My uncle, who stayed with us for some time, used to be a writer after he was discharged from the army. He's late now. I cannot exactly say what the trigger points were, maybe because of the conflicts in the polygamous home that I grew up with, maybe because of some challenges I had to do with my mother's business, because my mother was basically a support base financially when she had issues growing up, with her business, and then it affected us in so many ways. So that inspired me to start writing poetry at a point. And so much of what I've written in my life, especially before I became a journalist, were poetry about life situations, about life's conditions, and all of that. And so my two first published books were a collection of my poems, Sound of Broken Chains, and then Go Tell Our King. And then the third book is a biography of my mentor, the very distinguished Professor Emeritus, Professor Ebeleko. So those are the 3 major books. Then I've done what we call a series of philosophical reflections, which I call Pending Thoughts. And so I've written 2 of those volumes. The the third one should be out later in the year. And I've edited a book on child sexual violence in Nigeria.
Okay. Journalists in Nigeria and abroad focusing mainly on public health and development trends. How do you define development trends?
Okay, of course, because we live in a developing nation, and so many we are the developing nations such as Nigeria is bedeviled by so many things, issues with diseases, issues with conflicts, issues with, of course, poverty. So you cannot live in an environment and then be insulated. You have to be part and parcel of that environment. You are either providing solutions or pointing at the issue. So what basically journalists do is pointing out the issues with a view to having them redressed. We always say that journalists write history in a hurry. And so, of course, we have to write about the health issues, the fact that, for instance, the Nigerian healthcare system is comatose. People don't get emergency services. People don't get quality services. A lot of parts in the system, they will have a lot of avoidable deaths. And, of course, poverty. The fact that government is not true to its promises by ensuring the welfare of the citizens. So, the people die avoidable deaths. People live in very terrible conditions when the government has the responsibility, sometimes even the resources, to ensure that they have relief. So as journalists, that's basically what we do. And one of the contrasts I've seen was in 2006, I was a fellowship reporter in the USA for about 6 months in Denver, Colorado. And so I watched the TV a lot. And then I read newspapers because I was understudying. Part of the fellowship basically was to understudy journalism in the US. I was 32 at the time, about 15, 16 years ago. And so I saw a report of a cat that was trapped in between two buildings in New York. It was on CNN, it was on NBC, it was on the New York Times, it was on all the major news outlets across America. A single cat trapped in between the building, and that made national headlines. And there were TV crews moved to that environment, and there were live coverages of the rescue efforts by the emergency services until that cat was rescued. And that was amazing to me. And then after that, before I had recovered from it, one of my editors, the senior reporters who took me around, because I needed to go around, I had to shadow many of the reporters, go around with them on their reporting trips. So one of the other trips was being taken to Animal Hospital in another city in Colorado, and I had to see a dog being operated, and the hospital was a state-of-the-art hospital, the Animal Cancer Hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. And, so basically the issues that Americans deal with as a developed world is sometimes a sharp contrast to what we deal with here. Because when human beings have cancer, they hardly have that kind of attention. When human beings are even trapped, they hardly have that kind of emergency services at their disposal. But you have all of that for granted in the developed world. So those are the sharp contrasts. And so coming back, I was also reinforced to ensure that I report as much of the problem as possible so that we can get a solution. And it's incredible the kind of impact that journalists make. I still report once in a while because I'm just so in love with journalism and the fact that they make a whole lot of difference. While in Tell magazine, sometimes in 2008, I was reporting about the damages that Molue buses, the rickety Molue buses, city transit system, cause in terms of reckless driving, in terms of accidents. And then I used as a peg for the story a young man who was a Molue conductor who had his two legs amputated because he his boss was involved in an accident on the Third Mainland Bridge. He nearly he missed death by the whiskers, as we would say. And so I went to interview him, and on the hospital bed, he told me, after you write this story, please don't forget me. Remember me, please. I'll need you to help me. So I wrote the report, the special feature on malware. That was also about the time that BRT, the new modernized bus transit system, was coming into town. I wrote, so I was writing about the old system giving way and the new system coming in. And so after I wrote that report, I went back to him. I visited him at home, and I reported about his life, the fact that he learned tailoring, and then tailoring wasn't moving well, so he moved into malware, and now his 2 legs were crushed. His wife was threatening to leave him, and his 3 children. After I wrote that special report on him, just that singular feature on him, the Archbishop of the Anglican Church in Nigeria got across to me and asked me to see him. And he gave me money, I think 150,000. That was a lot of money then. And we opened the shop for him, bought him a set of sewing machines. Those are the things that journalism can do. There's a young lady also who works with us now. We just came back from a traditional wedding yesterday. Her community was being demolished during the lockdown in Lagos State. There was a lockdown. Everyone asked to stay at home. And then some officials of the Ministry of Environment and their contractors went and started pulling down the houses amidst a national lockdown for a global pandemic. And Lagos had the highest rates. Lagos was the epicenter of COVID-19 in Nigeria. Why would the Lagos state government render people homeless in the midst of a pandemic and with an ongoing national lockdown? So I reported about it on some online, that was about 2 years ago, some online newspapers, and then on social media, of course. And the Lagos state government got thoroughly embarrassed because people were outraged that how is this even possible? How is this even possible? And so the governor personally put out a press statement asking that the demolition work be halted. And I tell you, since then, they've never gone back to that community for that demolition. So those hundreds and hundreds of people were saved from that homelessness, that imminent homelessness, as a result of the media, this time basically the social media. So I do a lot of social media advocacy right now because it's extremely influential in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you. What do you think is the major issues faced by women and children in the society, and what is Sea Hope doing regarding those issues?
Thank you. Sea Hope, basically the Center for Children's Health Education, Orientation and Protection. We work with vulnerable children in marginalized, low-income communities. And so our work over the years have been focused on children and young people who are at risk of sexual violence, at risk of not getting an education as a result of poverty or ignorance on the part of their parents and guardians, and endangered young people generally because of the weakness in law enforcement in Nigeria and the general sense that our country is not exactly child-friendly. So many things happen to young people. They fall into wrong hands. They are harmed every single day. And so Sea Hope came on board as a vocal child advocacy organization to make a case for children, to empower those same children to stand on their own. And education is a major program in Sea Hope because we work in very impoverished communities. Many of these children do not have the means to go to school. Their parents are so impoverished. Even in Lagos, a big bulk of our work is in informal communities in Lagos. You'll be surprised that there are thousands and thousands of children out of school in Lagos, even though Lagos is supposed to have a free educational system for at least primary and secondary school. Because at the end of the day, the schools are actually not totally free. They have to buy uniforms, they have to buy school materials, they have to pay all kinds of levies. And so Many of them just could not cope and then they drop out of school. So we try to assist by providing educational materials, providing out of school lessons in some of the communities, providing computer skills in some of the communities. And work in Makoko, for instance, we've been there. This is our 9th year. We've been in Makoko from the onset. We have a community center there. We have a community center in Monkey Village, another community in Lagos, and then we work with orphanages and other communities across the country by targeting the children for different kinds of empowerment. Our summer school program is especially very huge and impactful. Last year we had summer school program that covered 12 centers across 6 states, which reached thousands and thousands of children. Educational empowerment, mentorship, skills development, economic skills. And so we believe in both defending the rights of children and empowering them, especially children who are completely voiceless, completely powerless. They're from impoverished homes, from hard to reach communities, and even communities like the communities in Lagos here, the informal communities, which are within the metropolis, but they are extremely so detached from government presence, government facilities, government intervention, and all of that. So we are all about the Nigerian child, and then we've also reached to the mothers over time, because children basically are under the direct guardianship of their parents, especially the mothers who are extremely influential in their lives. And the best way to actually empower children is to empower their mothers, especially when you talk about the economic sense of it. So about 2 years ago, we started the Empowered Mothers for Development Action called M-Mothers, where we empower mothers in terms of skills, in terms of economic grants, in terms of enlightenment, sensitization on personal hygiene and business management and all of that. So we're reaching out to the children, we're also reaching out to their mothers. And last year we had a major program across several informal communities to get the voices, document the voices of women impacted by forced eviction, because Lagos state government has over the years had this very radical anti-poor urbanization agenda, where thousands and thousands and thousands of people are rendered homeless with the slightest notice or with no notice at all. People who are already at the verge of existence, people who are already extremely poor, you send them into homelessness, thereby impoverishing them the more. So we have this VUCA program documenting the voices of people who are impacted by forced eviction, demolitions, and trying with an aim that it could be redressed, especially that the Lagos state government will focus more on providing low-cost housing, on attending to the issue of the very critical housing deficit that the state has.
Okay, so according to Paul Adeyeye, who said that Nigerian women is faced with 5 different gender challenges, which is gender-based violence, economic inequality, education parity, discriminatory in political seats, as well as exclusion in political activities. So do you agree with him? And what is C-Hope's involvement in protecting the rights of women and also children?
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, that is very correct. I could even say there are even much more areas where Nigerian women and girls especially face hurdles, because we are in a very patriarchal society.
Yes.
So many things against the woman and girl. I gave my the example of myself that I started school at the age of 9 in Benue State, North Central Nigeria. And I was even lucky actually to have started school, because my elder sisters, some of my elder sisters before me, especially the firstborn, the first 2 or 3 girls or females in my father's house, barely had education. They were married off very early. And so I guess it was an afterthought for me to have been able to start school at age 9. Maybe my father just changed his mind midway and said, well, maybe we'll just leave them. Maybe they can go to school. But before then, my father did not allow his female children to have an education. He said they were better off being married early as possible, so they can become good wives, give birth to healthy children before they become grown up and wayward. So that was his mantra then. That was his belief. But over time, it changed. Because from the age of, when I entered school at age 9, by age 10, I was already writing. I was topping my class. By age 15, I won a national award in my Sunday school in the church. And the church had to have a combined service to honor me as a 15-year-old.
Wow.
And there were special preparations. It was huge. So that basically changed my father's mindset about female education. And so, but mine was just an isolated incident. And I was just plain lucky. There are so many young people, so many girls, so many women who do not have these opportunities. Early marriage, female genital education, female genital mutilation, the lack of education, domestic violence, and all of that. So we've tried to intervene in a few ways through our organization, See Hope. We have one of the campaigns we have is Girls Go for Greatness, which targets girls in these poor and impoverished communities with education, with skills acquisition, with mentorship, so they can outgrow the odds in the environment and be the ideal women who will be in decision-making positions in future. And I always use myself as an example. I'm running an organization working with thousands and thousands of young people, children and young people, and working in several states. I grew up from a poor polygamous home, and I started school quite late. So I always tell them, you can be what you want to be once you have the determination. So that mentorship is extremely important for us. And also we have the anti-sexual violence program in our organization known as RARA, is Rise Against Rape and Abuse, where we sensitize girls to speak out against rape, to report abusers and potential rapists or potential molesters. So it's extra. We go to schools, we organize events and all of that. And then like I also mentioned that we have M-Mothers, where we also target women for sensitization and empowerment. And very interesting for us, last year we started, it's exactly a year this month, we started a shelter. And it's extremely, extremely important for us, an important project we just embarked on, and it's been a wonderful journey because women running away from women and girls impacted by domestic violence most times stay in violent relationship, in violent environment because there are no support systems. So the shelter, when you have a shelter, they can actually escape to for safety before they make the next move. Or when the case is in court, when they're trying to transition to other phases of their life. So shelters are extremely important. Now in Nigeria, we have just around 20 effective shelters for a population of over 2 million. That is grossly inefficient. 2 million people. And then half of them are women. So that's grossly inadequate. Compared to Canada, with a population of 38 million people, Canada has over 400 women shelters. Not animal shelters, not homeless shelters, not men shelters, not children shelters, just women. Over 400 efficient women shelters. So that's a society that cares for its women and girls who are impacted by gender-based, sexual and gender-based violence. And so we stepped in and we've had a lot of cases, and it's been an eye-opener. We're extremely proud of that we have this interventionist service to rescue women and girls from preventable deaths. And we have, we just ended a podcast. We've had 3 podcast series focusing, 2 of them have focused on women. and domestic violence. The last one we did, we had one during COVID-19, which talked about sexual, gender-based violence during COVID-19, especially against women. And it was put on radio. We just finished another one on the plight of domestic workers in Nigeria. Of course, most domestic workers are women and girls.
Yes.
And so it was extremely exciting for us. So in one way or the other, we've tried to intervene, producing podcasts, carrying out sensitization programs, setting up shelters, mentoring girls. So that has been our intervention.
Okay. Talking about sensitization, empowerment, and setting up shelters, I'm sure that even my viewers would want to know how you get your funding. So can you tell us how you get your funding?
Incidentally, I know we've done a lot of work in the last 8 years plus. We've not gotten much of institutional funding for some reasons. We've gotten institutional funding, but not large-scale institutional funding. I believe that we are getting there gradually because we're well received currently, and they're not doing badly in terms of funding. But we could do better. We could reach out to more and more people. We could expand the scope of our work. Until recently, Nigeria, for instance, was the poverty capital of the world. And so we could do with much more funding to reach out to more and more children, more and more young people, more and more women. A majority of our funders majority of our funding have actually been from individuals who believe in our work. People who believe that they can entrust their funds with us, and that will reach out to people in terms of advocacy, in terms of direct servicing, put children in school, give grants to women, teach people skills. And so we're hoping that we'll grow more and more, and then we'll do better. And talking about individual funding, there's a particular couple on an island. I call it a remote island, who has actually been much of our funding comes from their support annually because they believe in our work. They're happy with us, and they've been extremely amazing. Just a single couple, almost 85% of our funding, and we're so happy. We feel so lucky. But we, like Oliver, we are asking for more because we want to reach out to more and more children, more and more households, especially the hard-hit areas in Nigeria.
Have you received any funding from international bodies so far?
Yes, we've received funding from the Global Fund for Children. We received funding from Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. We received funding from different foundations, but not large-scale funding. Of course, we'll be happy to receive $1 million if that is possible, but we've not received anything like that. It's mostly, we receive funding from international bodies, so it's mostly small grants.
Okay.
But the thing with NGO is the more you grow, the more your funding increases, especially if people believe in the credibility of your work. And I believe that we are credible, and it's getting better by the day, especially because we want to reach more and more people.
Okay, can you tell us about your greatest challenge?
What is my greatest challenge? What is my greatest challenge?
Any
Of
setbacks
course,
at all?
we've been extremely lucky because the communities we work in are very cooperative, very excellent community stakeholders. The local chiefs, the youth leaders, everyone who believe who actually work like a family. And so I will not say that we've had any issues from the communities. We've had issues from the Lagos state government, of course. And I think they personally see me as an enemy because I've focused and I've done a lot of advocacy on the impact of this forced eviction on children. I worked in communities where we have we're working with hundreds of children, and then when you come one day, the entire community is raised down, and we cannot find a single child. Children with sweated to put in school, children with extremely bright futures, their homes are nowhere to be found. Those children are nowhere to be found. We cannot even trace them. How do you do that? Their houses are demolished. Some people have no notice. Some people, in the dead of night, the Lagos State government hires armed policemen, armed security personnel to go shooting into the communities, burning down their houses. How do you do that to human beings? Basically, what people forget is that we are first of all humans before we are even poor or rich. Before you give yourself labels and titles, and you have to respect people's human rights. You have to treat them as humans, because money is just a currency for survival, and government has all the resources to ensure that this currency gets to everybody. So stop treating people on the levels of their socioeconomic status. Treat them as humans first. So my biggest pain has been the plight of these children. Now, Nigeria has consistently has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. And then Lagos has the biggest concentration of children, the biggest concentration of the population. And this same Lagos, your priority should be to ensure that children get into school. So why do you demolish their communities and send them out of school? Once they are uprooted, they become homeless, they become street children, and majority never go back to school. So how are you solving the problem? Because you want to build big estates by the riverside, you demolish the homes of the poor and render them powerless. So for me, I think that is the biggest challenge I've had. And of course, the need for us to have more funding so that we can do more.
Talking about outreach and empowerment, are you focused just in Lagos here, or you also go across the country? Just as the northern part, eastern part?
The more than half of our work is focused in Lagos. Lagos is so huge. Over 20 million population, and most of them young people. So it's actually overwhelming. You could get lost working in Lagos and even forget the rest of the country, because the population is so enormous and the problems are equally enormous. So majority of our work has been, more than half, maybe like 70% has been focused on Lagos, especially the informal communities, what you call the slum communities. But over time, we've also extended to about 6 other states: Benue, Plateau, Kaduna, Ebonyi, Ogun State. And so we work in selected communities. In Ebonyi, we work with children in mining communities. In the north central states of Kaduna, Plateau, Benue, we work with orphanages. We work with communities, but mostly with orphanages. Of course, you've had the Boko Haram crisis, you've had the herdsmen crisis over the years. And what is not regularly reported is that it has caused huge displacement. And the fact that majority of the people that are outside the government approved IDP camps are actually the people that are outside the IDP camps are actually more than the people who are there. And these people have no succor, they have no support system from government. And many of these children are in orphanage.
Betty, can you tell us about your intervention methods? Do you have psychiatrists or psychologists who, maybe as part of your staff, who help you with mentorship?
Thank you very much. Of course, we have well-trained staff. Our staff undergo regular training and in dealing with survivors of sexual violence, trainings on counseling. We have someone who studies social work, and part of our training is responding to survivors of sexual violence. She is currently the project officer in charge of the shelter program. And also we also deal with other organizations. Sea Hope is just 8+, but there are organizations, there are persons who have been in this work for over 20 years. And so we partner with them because we believe in learning from them and growing along the way. So sometimes we bring them to the shelter, to the office, to meet with the people we work with the survivors that we deal with. We bring them to our event to mentor the young girls that we work with. So we also have a very good working relationship with the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. We take some of the persons who work with to the office to meet with their trained counselors, psychologists, trauma counselors, where they get psychosocial support. So it's been wonderful, and we really appreciate the gravity of the problem that these women and girls go through, and they need to get them experts. So we worked well on that by providing the people with the expertise on these matters.
So you are well educated and have accomplished a lot. You could as well own a paid job anywhere in the world. So what made you come back home to become an activist?
Oh, it's funny actually, because when you talk about being well educated and maybe exposed, it's not necessarily a condition for staying outside of your country. I believe that I'm bringing to the table my experience, my training that I've had across the world, working as a fellowship journalist in the USA over 15 years ago, and recently as a visiting fellow at the University of York in England over a year ago. I've acquired a lot of training, a lot of experience, and I believe that my country needs me. So at the end of the day, it's not basically the kind of comfort, the luxury that we enjoy based on our accomplishments, so to say, or our exposures or our qualifications. It's about the lives we touch. And I believe that I can touch far more lives in Nigeria than living in a flat in London, in a flat in Washington, D.C., or Geneva. I've been a staff of the United Nations. I think I'm more fulfilled working with women and children, with local chiefs, providing solutions in the slum communities, in impoverished areas, in the IDP camps, where you have thousands and thousands of people needing help. So I believe that my experience, my skill as a writer, as a journalist, my trainings I've had over the years in non-profit management, in people management, are all gearing me to be an asset to my country. I'm not giving up the hope of maybe living abroad someday, but right now, I believe that I have a lot to offer to my country, to the people that really need my help, especially the children and young people who are poor, impoverished, lack opportunity.
Please share with the viewers your website as well as your media pages, just in case someone needs to donate or needs your assistance.
The web, on the internet, especially via our social media handles. On Twitter, we are See Hope Nigeria. See Hope Nigeria. On Instagram, we are See Hope _Nigeria. And also our shelter program, which is an initiative under See Hope. Twitter, it's Hearts Nigeria. On Instagram, it's Hearts of Hope Shelter. And of course, my personal Instagram page, Betty.Abah. My personal Twitter handle, @Betty Abah. So once you Google See Hope, CEE-Hope, or See Hope Nigeria, you get a lot of information about our work, pictures, videos, and then, of course, how to contact us. So we're basically a click away.
I hope to see you next time.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you very much for watching this episode.